Hey everybody, welcome to Dyson Design episode, whichever this one is. I think it's 15, something like that. Doesn't matter.
14.
14, 15, one of those numbers. I am joined, as always, by MrMax. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Nice. All right. That's good. Today, at viewer request, we're going to take a look at investigation in RPGs. Sometimes it's a topic you see talked about, but I think it's one that it was a great suggestion. It needs to be talked about more because it's something that's very often done poorly. You see all sorts of faux pas, which let's get into some of those. Let's go ahead and start right on it.
Yeah, it's like oftentimes we see like even when you look at it's really a topic like when you look at the common advice that people say about how to run an investigation game, how to run like an investigation scenario and stuff like that. It's often like advice I'm very unsatisfied with. Hey, hello, Angar. Nice seeing you. It's oftentimes advice I find like terrible that it make a game like that's very railroady, very on rail, And I think we can do better than that. And the first thing I want to address is that in the style I like to run a game, where I like to let the player lead. I like to read to run with minimal prep and stuff like that. Say investigation can happen. If something happened in the game, somebody died that the character knew, or something, or some kind of like strange force seemed to be acting up on the world, and the characters want to investigate it. Now all of a sudden, you're in an investigation scenario. Maybe as a GM, you want to throw them in an investigation loop, so you create this mystery, and they don't bite. They just decide to go punch somebody or whatever, right? Just like, well, then you're not in an investigation scenario. You have to respect that. You have to, they're controlling the character. Don't put them on the rail. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, and I think that's totally fine. And then maybe, there's just because the characters don't do something, you don't have to force characters to do something. There's a much more elegant way to do it. If you really want to run an investigation game, well, first off, just tell people that's what you want to do. Second, if they don't end up investigating the thing, just think of the logical consequences of, oh, you didn't investigate this murder that's going around killing people. Maybe the guards don't stop him. Maybe it isn't, somebody, he ends up killing somebody else. And now, maybe it ends up getting closer and closer to the party. Maybe it doesn't. That same thing actually happened in one of my home games where they just decided, there's a, serial killer going around in that town. That sucks. But we just got here. We don't have time to investigate that. We're moving on. And so that guy's still out there somewhere. That's... So yeah,
and the world keep on going, even though, like the problem that the party ignore either is solved by somebody else in the world or it is not solved. But the world keep on going. The world is like the mystery doesn't stay on pause with nothing happening until the character come back to it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to leave things like that, right? You don't want to, if you try to end a campaign or even a one shot with all of the questions answered, you're going to be there forever, right? And I don't think that would necessarily be interesting, even if you could manage it. It's nice to have something end and people go, wow, that was great, that was fun. But what about that guy? What happened to that guy? And well, maybe that's a jumping off point for a future campaign or a future one shot is the fallout of what you guys didn't do in this game.
Yeah, and obviously there are games and there are settings that are more prone to investigation type game, like Call of Cthulhu even call like their character investigator, right? The PC, that's the name for the PC. They're not adventurer, they're investigator. But I think it's not only like based on the system, it's also based on this. It's a lot based on the setting in that case, and the fact that, well, you're not gonna go around just like you're in a modern kind of like era. You're not gonna go around like adventuring, like dungeon delving and punching people, like
you start kicking doors down kicking doors
Yeah.
down and shooting people in the middle of Rhode Island, you're probably gonna get a visit from the police pretty soon.
So when you're in a world that is like much more civilized, maybe like doing the investigation is one thing that you're gonna be more prone, that you're be more inclined to do, because it's one avenue where you can like get involved in some kind of like adventure that you can. But
Mhm.
investigation campaign can happen in any setting. All right,
Hmm.
like that. Armen
Yeah.
say, "Hello, Armen. I would like to see rules, procedure for investigation that is established so that players and GMs are aware of the process. Like all combat is transparent because established rules." That's a that's an interesting one
Mm,
because it's not something I'd like to. It's not something I want to see in the rules, right? Investigation. I don't. Investigation is not something that should be resolved by some dice roll. What do you think? Or could it be? Because it's like it makes me think of a like the Burning Wheel, where they have like mechanics for
mm,
social combat, right?
mhm,
You wanna
mhm.
you wanna win an argument against somebody. Well, now you're gonna fill up your little script saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna do an argument," and then add an ad hominem, ad fuck ad nominem,
Yeah.
and then I repost like a counter, like whatever,
Mm,
and you do like those you fill in this little thing, and you don't have to like role play the social encounter, because you just fill out your little script, and then you compare what he did, and then you figure out who won, right? Just
mm. I think investigations really shine a light on the skill-based RPGs, those mechanics, because then you just know that, well, combat's resolved by the skills mechanic, well, then
yep.
an investigation is likewise resolved by the skills mechanic. But I could see how it might be nice to have a sort of framework that you can break. Of course, a general rule of anything is, once you know the rule, you can break the rule. But something like, if you had something like both for players and GMs, not as a railroading thing, but as a general, this is probably how things are going to go. So you sort of know how to prepare for it, of like a gathering information, then you confront the criminal or the perpetrator or whatever, and then you go on from there. Yeah, Arnman continues. Some steps, such as deduction roll, that might be allowed if enough clues are discovered. If successful, the GM tells them they think of talking to a specific person or look in place. Mm, I, I like and dislike this.
Yeah, I'm
So
more in the camp of dislike this.
mm, I
Yeah.
so some modules I've seen in games that have knowledge rolls will have, basically, the more clues that you organically discover, the either the difficulty class of the knowledge check goes down, or maybe it's some noble in the city has committed some crime, and it would be just like a total bullshit it, put it together out of nowhere. And it's like a DC 40 in a D20 system or something crazy.
Yeah.
But you find like a signet ring, and then the DC becomes 30, and then you find a paper with some handwriting on it, and it can become like 25, and so on. I like that. I think that could be set the DC like unbelievably high at first, and then start to lower it. That way, it gives a chance for characters that are not competent investigators. They can just do it the hard way and collect all of the evidence.
For character or for players?
Um, I would say for both, because if the alternative being the character is just incredibly intelligent, knowledgeable, and they're able to make these great leaps of logic just by going, do I right knowledge
Mm,
nobility 35 or something, and it's like, well,
yeah.
that signet ring is from this family, this guy is a fan of this particular artist, his paintings are on the wall in this place, or stolen from this place or whatever. So you can make these leaps of logic from very little data. Or the character could be, some schmuck off the street that doesn't know anything about, maybe he's not even from this town. He knows nothing about the local nobility. So he just he's got to take it all the way to the top and find very clear evidence.
Yeah. What I dislike about that is that oftentimes it's gonna turn the game into like a list of checklists of things that you need to look into, that you need to accomplish and stuff like that. And if you have enough of them, well, it's very video gamey in my like. It's like, if you have enough of them, then it's gonna be an easy check. But if you have not quite enough, like it's gonna be moderate or hard, right? Just like, and it takes away like it's almost like turning back your player into like just human die roller. And of course, in investigation, like, because like there's this weird thing where you want to engage the player, but you have to engage with the characters. It's the character that's in the world, right? So you have like this kind of disconnect there. Hey, Shauna, nice seeing you. You have this kind of a disconnect there, where like if a character, like in the investigation, you might want to go look in this computer terminal. Then you're gonna have a skill check for your computer skill check, right? You might want to have you might want to look for tracks in the mud. Then you have a tracking skill, or so the character skills are involved in that way. But it's still the player that need to interact with the world in a sense there, right?
Yeah, this is the part I don't like about it, when it's
exactly
when it's
yeah.
unprompted,
and you have that like in the BRP system, and like as an optional rule. Sometimes like Heat and Dog use it in the Call of Cthulhu game. You have where the idea roll, like you're just like trying to do your stuff, or roll an idea, or now you think about, you're looking into the shoes of the guy, right? Just like, fuck's sake, let me
yeah, exactly. Like if I roll like a knowledge check and go, I'm thinking about, like books I've read about, medicine and anatomy, and try to, picture what, then I'm okay with the GM going, fantasy setting, and I don't know everything about the setting, but my character would. Then I've asked the GM, Psst, help me out here, without saying as much. But I don't want it unprompted, I don't.
Because like, like having having the GM tell you what your character thinks or do, like Chandra said, it's really lame. But
I think a way you could fix this is, instead of having like a fixed, they find this that reduces 5 off of the DC, they find this that reduces another 2 off of the DC, instead have it as be a very like loose framework of, the players could go and find a witness and shake information out of them. That could be one thing that they could do. They could come up with things on their own accord, and
I'll tell you that I think the investigation should never be resolved by a dice roll. You're never gonna have a dice roll that's gonna give you the result of the investigation.
No,
the investigation is resolved by interacting with the world, right? You go around, you look at stuff, you talk to witness, you look for clues,
and you
try different things, you set up a trap, whatever. You do all kind of things.
I was bringing this up as a single part of the investigation, of the like collecting evidence phase, right? Like, you've succeeded at this. Maybe this die roll tells you, certainly who it is. You have pinned it on the victim, but that doesn't do anything. The mere knowledge that this guy is the guy that did it doesn't solve the problem that he's still out there. Now you have to choose, how do you confront this guy? How do you take the evidence? If it is a noble, and continuing with this example, he might just have a lot more social and political power than you, and be able to cover all of this up, and you don't end up getting anything with it. Likewise, I think if you do take him to court, it shouldn't just be like a single, one guy rolls a diplomacy roll and then he's going to jail. That would be pretty lame.
And you can be wrong in your investigation as well. You can have but it's like, yes, you're gonna have check, but like it's gonna be check like, well, I'm trying to look for, like, I look for a fingerprint, like, and then you got like a check for that, right? Like if you say what your character do, it's something specific and stuff like that. Like You're not gonna have a check just for I look for clue or I look
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Well, tell me what your
yeah. You
character
need,
does, right? Tell me like
yeah.
you look. I look on the desk. I look
So
on
yeah. So
be a
I
little
think
more
our point
specific.
is you need a fairly robust skill system, right? Because if your system is like I'm gonna trash on Dungeons and Dragons Fifth Edition real quick, mainly because I see people try to run investigations in that system and they gutted the skill system. So
Yeah,
like
it's
what are
perception.
people
Roll
do? What are
perception.
people doing? They're rolling perception, and
Yeah,
they're rolling the equivalent of sense motive, and that's pretty much it. And
yeah,
if mechanically you're only rolling, this is kind of the benefit of a crunchier system that has more stuff to it, is that okay, maybe you can roll a bunch of different stuff. It's you don't you very rarely feel like, because I mean, watch those actual plays where they're doing an investigation in a game that doesn't have that many skills. It's usually one or two characters making all of the rolls, and then the other three, standing there
yeah.
waiting for combat to start.
Well, that's what I'm also like. I'm not a big fan of like trying to have like a investigation game. I say like I say, if investigation happen, if the character want to investigate
Mm,
something, then give them the room and
mm,
give them the tools to do so. Give them the opportunity to do so, and then you feed like you don't have everything planned because you don't know. Like maybe just somebody got killed. There's a dead body there. You're on the
mm,
scene. No, oh yeah, well, maybe we should look into that. Now they decide that okay,
mm.
then you can feed them and you create it as you go, and you listen to the suggestion of the player as well. You integrate them in the so maybe he did like he came up with a good idea, made a good role and stuff like that. That become okay, it's part of it now we're committed to that, we're building onto that. You make the like keep the character,
Mm,
be co-creator of the world, like
mm.
of the event, right? So
Yeah,
you let them lead, you follow what they say, you integrate it in the mystery, in the actual mystery.
yeah. I mean, because very often you will end up in a situation where you can get a GM that's frustrated that people don't want to go on their murder mystery, uh, especially if you haven't pitched it as such to the players. This happens like in the middle of a campaign or something, and then they're like, "Dude, you just showed me like some guy's vaporized, unidentifiable corpse. I don't want to go after that guy. That guy sounds really dangerous. I'll stay in my lane."
And even if you were planning on doing that, or there's a murder on the loose and stuff like
Mm,
that, or the character
yeah,
is gonna try
yeah,
to catch him, and they decide not to,
mm,
well, maybe you can still like use that and to some extent. Well, oh, now the murderer think that those character are witness to something because
mm,
like the hook that you throw that they
yeah,
didn't take.
mm,
Now like, oh, now they're maybe the loose end in the eye of
yeah,
this murderer, and now they go after them, and now it's not an investigation game. Now it's a
yeah,
pursuit. It's a
yeah,
it's a chase in a sense, not necessarily like a high pace, high action one,
yeah.
a game of cat and mouse and stuff like that. So it's a different thing, You thinking that the PC would go after the killer? Well, maybe now it's the killer going after the
Mhm.
PCs.
Yeah, because so often the killer in these investigations, in the event that it is a murder investigation, which it often is, um, they only ever seem to kill NPCs,
Yeah,
and it's very rare. Um, and one of the notes I have is you want to avoid the Scooby Doo trope, and that's kind of the main characters in Scooby Doo. They're never threatened. That not really. The threat is never on the main characters. The threat is on other people. It's always everyone else is threatened. And when there's none of that threat, the pressure to succeed feels really kind of lame, for lack of a better term, where it's like, oh, if we fail, somebody else may die. It's like, well,
yeah.
maybe a merchant that gives the party really good prices on stuff dies, and it's like, oh, that sucks. But you get to move on. If you really want your players to engage with something, create a serious situation where it's like, we gotta stop this guy or this is gonna be a problem. It's
Good evening, Phil. Nice seeing you. I thought you were saying by the Scooby Doo syndrome. I thought you were going to say about the first guy that you met. He's gonna be like the first guy that you met that was like denying the problem or whatever is gonna be the bad guy, right? Just gonna be
oh yeah, and the tropey, mask reveal,
yeah,
like, uh, you know, Yeah, that's true, but it's they're fleeing from something that it always in the end is like, this is just some random businessman. He wasn't actually a danger at all, and it's like it's just. I mean, if that's the tone, great. But if it's supposed to be
Yeah.
somebody who actually murdered someone, then maybe don't do it like that. Don't. I think if you're going to do an investigation, it's definitely not a time to pull your punches, right?
Uh,
If you want
the
to
reason
set it
I,
up as a serious murderer, right?
the reason of the episode was that too is they were using the same
Reuse animation. Yep.
they were using the
Yep.
animation all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And another reason why I don't like when you come to the table with like, oh, okay, this is gonna be a mystery and stuff like that,
Mm.
right? You plan all the story. Oh, and there's gonna be this murderer, it's gonna be this guy, and then the character is gonna have to find those clues and stuff like that. Then you turn the experience into, oh, guess what the GM thought of kind of game, right? It
Uh-huh.
doesn't. You're not in role playing anymore. Now you're just like in
Mm.
this guessing game, right?
Mm.
And I think that's, you know, it's not. You can do it in a
Mm.
role playing game, right? But it's not
Mm.
the strength of the role playing game. Now you're just like into like this. I created this mystery in my head, and you have to unravel it, and you're no longer in the mindset of your character trying to figure out the mindset of the
Mm.
GM.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot. And I've even seen it lead to people getting frustrated and just going around. That it can create the murder hobo syndrome. People complain
yeah,
about murder hobos, but it's like if you're GMing like that, well, eventually a guy who's frustrated and can't find what he's supposed to be looking for. A lot of times they'll just go, all right, I kill this guy. It seems like he did it.
yeah,
Oh, it wasn't that guy. Well, I go to the next guy, kill him, and then just because you're not thinking as a rational human being anymore. You're just bashing your head into a puzzle. So you really need to be able, as a GM, to allow players to come up with different solutions than you came up with.
Hello, Justin. So when you reach that point, you'll know that you're catching up. Yeah,
mm,
we acknowledge you. Let us know when you're up to
mm,
date. So
mm,
yeah, avoiding like this guessing game. I think
mm,
like you see like when we about to touch those topic, right? Sometimes
mm,
I go online and look at what other people say, like the common knowledge, right? And
mm,
that's what I'm saying. I say like I often get frustrated by the state of the discourse, right? Because people say that they say like, oh, plan more than plan more clue than they need and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, you're just like creating a railroad.
I,
You're just creating like those this series of checklists that the
to,
people has to go through, right?
to be honest, I don't really plan clues at all. I just know I know what is the problem, what's the crime this person has
Yeah,
committed, who is
yeah,
it, where does it happen? That's pretty much it.
yeah. Because
Maybe
like,
maybe you think of some weird things like the guy did it with magic. The guy's a
yeah,
mage. That might be a tip off. But I'm not thinking like there's that signet ring thing. It's just something I totally made up off the top of my head. So why in the middle of a game would you not be able to totally
yeah,
make it like, oh yeah, the guy is a noble. He probably would have a signet ring if one of the players looking around for stuff that might have been left behind. Yeah, sure.
yeah. And it's also like if the character has a good idea that makes sense, I'll go
Mm,
look in the garden to look
yeah,
for tracks in the mud or
yeah,
whatever. Like then use that and integrate it. You
yeah,
didn't plan that, but
yeah,
now you say that was a pretty good idea. It
yeah,
it, it
yeah.
should give something. It should work. So
Yeah.
maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
And randomization can do good for you here too. Remember, that's the core of all tabletop RPG game mechanics is some
Yeah.
amount of random chance. So if you don't want to just give it to the players, make it a die roll. It could be totally random. It could be,
And
weighted to some extent.
you also have to consider that if the characters are supposed to be like somewhat competent investigator or
Mm.
intelligent people and stuff like that, some of the things they look for are gonna be correct or are gonna work. So let them
Yeah,
run with that, right?
yeah, exactly. Like Villier says, picking the wrong guy is a part of a lot of these stories. The false ending, yeah. Don't inform them every time they've made a correct decision or every time they've made a wrong decision. And that goes with not telling players what you think. Yeah, you see footprints, but it's it seems like it's just the gardener. It doesn't seem like, well, okay, what was the point of saying that? I don't know if you're being an unreliable narrator when you're telling me what my character thinks in that sort of way,
Yeah.
or if you're trying to cut to the chase and keep me off of, red herrings, which is totally another thing we can get into. But if you just
Try.
say there's footprints, then it's like, okay, then we can start investigating the footprints, and then we can find out through gameplay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was just the gardener. Damn it, and another dude's dead on the other side of town. And so yeah.
Yeah, try to be very factual with
Mhm.
your description. You don't
Yeah.
say what a character thinks, don't say what
Mhm.
it seems, stuff like that. Just say like, well, it's a footprint.
Yeah.
It's about like a 12-inch long,
Mhm. Yeah.
pretty wide, right?
Mhm.
Just like
It's a
somewhat
modern
deep.
setting,
You know,
maybe it's got
yeah,
the soul
yeah, the soul
the
imprint. Yeah,
print, and you could match it up to some like size 11 loafers or something, and then something
yeah.
like that, and
And that's also something like you can let the player like say, oh, okay, that's something that the
mm,
player can say. You just say like, wait, there's some
yeah,
footprint there.
yeah,
They go toward the
mm,
north. They're wide, and like another
mm,
player can say like, I look a little closer, trying to see some detail of the foot of
yeah,
the sole, right? And then you say,
yeah,
yeah, you can see. There you
yeah.
go. You say, yeah, there,
Or
Dr.
pouring
Martin.
castings and stuff, and um
Mm,
they you can really get more into it, and there you're in the character, you're feeling things out, you're
mm,
backing the rest of the party off, like, whoa, don't step there, I found tracks over here. And rather than what I find when you just say, no, there's no blueprints, no, there's no this, no, there's no that, then by the third or fourth time you've done that, what starts happening is the role playing stops, and they're just like, well, geez, is there a false bottom to the floor? Is there a thing in the attic? And they just start asking questions because they're like,
yeah,
well, apparently my character is blind because nothing that, they can't see anything. So what the hell is going on here?
yeah. And yeah, put some clue on the real killer that makes it clear to the player they choose fully, like they are left-handed or whatever.
I think maybe sometimes. I think that depends
Yeah,
on the tone. I think uh maybe in like Call of Cthulhu, where it's explicitly an investigator sort of game, maybe you don't want to make it so clear. Maybe you want it I think there you want the players always questioning what their characters are seeing, what if, is this real? This could just be a crazy murderer not involved with any sort of old god cult. Is this could just be a totally different guy, a copycat killer or something, and then they really have to dig deep to find something that's got like, 9 out of 10 similarities with the actual killer, but it's that one thing that, isn't it.
yeah, and you have to. Oh, fuck! I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Yeah, like the real killer.
Mm,
You might like even as GM, you might even not know from the get go, but you play along as the character go and stuff like that. And then at some point, if you think they did a pretty good job and stuff like that, and they have a suspicion stuff like that, yeah, they're right. And if they have tested it, and if they ignore stuff, and if their investigation is not logically consistent,
mm.
then well, you got the wrong guy, I guess. You can like or maybe then you can just do like a lock roll and behind the screen or
Yeah.
whatever if you want.
Maybe they end up getting the right guy, but when they're filing their police reports, the police are like, "What the hell?
Yeah,
We have we can't figure out what crimes this guy's committed. You've just killed a random dude. So even though you were right, now you're having to go to court cases, or
yeah.
maybe
If
you're
you have
just
if you
thrown
have
in
police and
jail.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
they might have their own investigation on their end and say
Uh-huh.
like, well, this guy got an alibi. That's pretty
Yeah.
strong. Have you looked into that? And they say,
Yeah.
well, no, we didn't. Well,
No, we
you
just kicked the
should.
door down and shot him in the back of the head, and it's like, well, that doesn't look too
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
So think of the aftermath as another thing. If you are doing prep work, I would more, think of those sorts of things. And maybe part of your preparation can be solo role playing the killer, and I don't mean that in literally. Yeah, it should at least.
yeah. It should.
In some actual plays, don't see it happening, and it kind of takes you out of it. Um, but yeah, I don't mean solo role playing the killer in like literally using a solo role playing system necessarily, although you could. but just, going through the mental processes of like, because too often the serial killer or whatever is just treated as a difficulty class 40. It's just, there are a handful of things, and then the actual person that's doing all of these things isn't a very well fleshed out or well thought out character.
Well, if you want to go with the circular, those people, like there's like I would say like a reason to their madness, like
Yeah.
they're mad, but they are like they have like some reason in the way
Yeah.
they do stuff, like they have motivation, they have goal, they have compulsion or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's not like usually totally random. Otherwise,
Yeah,
they wouldn't get
exactly.
caught.
Yeah.
They have a pattern, but like an investigation can be much more than just serial killer, like
Yes, that's true.
murder,
Yeah,
things like
let's
that. We
step
talk
away
about
from
that, but
that for a
it can
bit.
be like heist. Let's talk about some other thing that are interesting for an investigation, like suddenly there's more monster in this region. Let's figure out why. That's an investigation in a fantasy in the fantasy setting. Some people disappear. That's a lot of akin to the serial killer, but it can be something different. It can be like, now you have the cultists kidnapping people. Could be something of value got stolen. It could be the Lord suddenly behave in an erratic manner. What happened to him? In especially when you have like fantastical element, you have so much room for investigation. That's what I'm saying. Investigation can happen in any setting, and you don't have to have like a game that is geared toward investigation to investigation to happen.
And it
in
helps.
science fiction or in modern setting, there's an accident that happened. Like maybe it was your first session. Like some like a train derailment, or like a spaceship got caught in the asteroid field for some reason. It shouldn't happen, but now it happened. It's a mistake, and then you realize, well, maybe somebody tell you, you know what? We think there were foul play there. Somebody made your ship go to that place, or traffic with. Well, now you're in an investigation thing. If the player bite, right?
Yeah.
Now, like this thing, looking there's a lot of value. Have you anything else you want to go?
Supers games also, finding origins of people. Maybe there's way more superheroes. Like there's one. At first, there's one villain, especially in a very high like power superhero game. Often the problem becomes there are too many problems to solve at once, and once there was a literal villain of the week, and now there's one every day, and it's like, where are all these people getting their powers? Maybe they're not killing people, but maybe they're doing petty theft and all sorts of stuff.
Like proposing like, how is the Lord seen in two plays at once? That's interesting as well.
Yeah, and in general, think about the yeah, exactly. That would think about the implications of the fantasy elements in your world as to crime and intrigue and those sorts of things. Somebody mentioned divination magic earlier. Did I start? Yes. Arman mentioned, spells that see into the future, divination, augury are in games, but we need spells that see in the past for area of effect and limits for time past.
Well, you have like speak with the dead and stuff like that as well. Like that's often time like, well, who killed that guy? Well, let's just ask him. Speak with the dead and
exactly. So it's things you need to consider about it. And I think in a good world, you have if let's say the bodies are all cremated in the area, weirdly enough, then that could be a sign that it's like, oh, maybe this guy knows something about magic because he knew we would attempt this. So you start narrowing it down by the things that you can't do rather than the magic that you can cast, or something along those lines. If people can just commune with their god, if people can just commune with their god and go, I know it was that guy. Maybe that's okay, but maybe now the issue becomes, well, the judge doesn't follow that god. The judge doesn't like that god. Maybe the judge doesn't even think that god exists and thinks you're just some crazy schizophrenic person. That's, like, so just in general, you need to think about the way the world
Yeah.
works in these things.
But like Justin was saying that, like, like Clue is the best role-playing mystery game, right? It's just like, but it's right in a sense, right? If you have like this pre-written mystery that the people try to solve, that's what you're doing at that point. You're basically like playing Clue, like, oh, was
Mm,
it like Mrs. White with the candelabra in the ballroom, right? Just like, and then you just have to figure out, like, to tat around until
mm,
you found the right, that you check the right box, right? He's right, like he's saying that in a goofy way, I guess. And because like Clue is not really a role-playing game.
mm.
You play a role, you have like this
Yeah,
little character that you are,
yeah,
Professor
yeah,
Green or whatever the name, stuff like that. But you're not getting into the mindset of the character. You're not like, you're just
yeah,
like trying
yeah,
to play this board game, and you're just
yeah.
like asking question, right? That
Mm,
are, not talking, talking from player to player. And oftentimes that's what those mystery game turn into.
mm.
Yeah. Do you have any other
All,
context you think you can see mystery that's interesting? How do you get into a mystery?
um, I think like history of the world building things could be a thing. Like, very often there's a, all the giants disappeared, and it's like,
Yeah,
well, what happened to
those are
them? And
interesting.
maybe that's a thing. The characters. It's not a particularly like high stress investigation as compared to a lot of the other ones. It's just like an interesting thing. Maybe it leads to a lot of money. Maybe it does lead to a high stress thing, and you end up uncovering some ancient threat that they all died to seal away, and you weren't supposed to go and fiddle with it. There's lots of different things you could go into with that.
Hmm.
As far as especially because if you have an adventurer that is an archaeologist or something, I could see that happening in Call of Cthulhu as well. Somebody's an archaeologist. They're like, what happened to the Toltec people or the Olmec people? Some of these South American, and then you could get into some of the old god stuff as they start delving into it. So yeah, I think there's that as well.
Yeah, that can be an interesting one. An earlier
Mm-hmm.
birthday of a party member
Yeah.
be accused of a crime, and that's especially can be useful if a player like is going to be on vacation, is going to be away for a few weeks, a few sessions, whatever. So, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a character is going to be like in custody, and then we're
Mm-hmm.
going to try to find proof to clear his name, right? That can
Mm-hmm.
be an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
A good reason.
if you really do want to, if you really are insistent on having your players do an investigation, I suppose that's a good way to do it too. Have some, or have it happen as they pass by, and one of them's called, hey, you're a witness, you're a suspect, get over here. And then now they either have the choice of being a part of the investigation or being on the run from the police. So they still have a choice. It's not full railroading, but the choice is a little more tempting one way than the other.
Yeah, yeah. So now that we have like a, okay, let's say we succeeded in establishing a mystery, and or the players want to investigate, decide like, oh, you know what? Maybe we should look into that shit. Maybe we should
Mm,
go try to find people that would know, right? Because that's all it takes. That's all
mm,
it's. Oh, maybe we should go look to the library and stuff like that. And I should go. How do you go about allowing or facilitating as a GM the investigation scenario? Like, the kind of like, they're interested in that, they want to know more, they want to research that thing, they want to figure out stuff in the world. How do you go about that?
I think there's a lot of ways, and I think it really helps if you want to run an investigation scenario and you don't have proactive players. You're in for a really bad time, unless you are a
Yeah.
frustrated author and you do just want to tell your players a story. But if you want, if you're more R style and you're more reactive GM, then they will need to be doing the investigating, right? And I
Yeah.
think something that really helps with that is just having a timeline, right? Having in a week, another person turns up dead. In days, this section of these tunnels collapse and they block off an ancient mural that would have given them some information about the history of these people. Have things where the players have to go do things Otherwise, there will be things that are just blocked off from them, and they will just have to take a stab at the dark.
Yeah. If
Um,
you have like a, if you do as I suggest, and you let the player lead, and like
mm,
they're into an investigation because they
mm,
want to investigate something, because their character want to
mm,
figure out something in the world, right? It's not because
yeah,
you, the GM, tell you, we're gonna do an
mm,
investigation
yeah,
scenario, and then all of a sudden they need to find a reason. No, just like
mm,
you created a world, there's stuff happening in the world, and now the character in this world want to figure out stuff about the world. The stuff in the world change or are out of the norm, and they want to figure out what's causing it, what's the cause behind it, right? Then it already like imply that you have somewhat of a proactive player. So
mm,
that's good.
that's
That's
true.
something
Yeah,
taken care of.
yeah,
Having time pressure, having the world keep on going and stuff keep happening in the world is always a good thing.
mm,
But if the player want to investigate something, I think you need to leave them some room, some time to do so. If
yeah.
you keep
That's true.
like sending action scene after action scene,
Yeah,
they want to travel to the city where the sage is to ask him
mm,
some question about something.
mm,
They want to go to the library. They want to go, but every time they try to go somewhere, now like there's dogs driving around and trying to shoot at them, and then
yeah,
the character has to get cover, and they never fucking make it to the
mm,
library. Then they're never gonna get the information they need. They're not
mm,
gonna get in this next step in the investigation,
mm,
right? They're always like distracted by some
yeah,
emergency,
mm,
like, oh, there's people getting killed right now, right?
yeah,
Like I said, oh,
yeah.
we're investigating. Like, no, there are all those monsters coming around. We
Mm,
don't know where from. Let's try to figure it out. But you
mm,
always like throw those monsters at them that are
mm,
happening, right? If the characters are interested in doing some investigation, give them some rooms to
yeah.
do so. Don't always
Yeah.
like show fucking emergency in their face.
Yeah, like it shouldn't be a comical amount of pressure.
Yep.
It shouldn't be, at a certain point you're like, geez, or is just that is half of the population of the city, under the control of this killer, or what's going on?
Yeah.
And or how fast does this killer move? They just killed another dude in, 2 hours on the other side of the city, and and you don't have a good reason for that. Maybe that is also part of the clue, though, is that it's like, oh, well, that's like impossible for someone to do. This guy must be a wizard or something because he can teleport, or if he's a superhero, or a supervillain, that's one of his powers or something like that. But yeah, you should give some time for sure to do some of the slower stuff. You don't want, controlling the pace is a tricky thing. It's sort of both players and the GM can control it. I
Yep.
think sometimes GMs may be too tempted to keep, the pace, no, they're spending, 5 minutes, reading a book here, reading this here, and then they're just like, nah, this is boring, zoom on to the next thing. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know,
It's like if you look at a in a way like as a movie, right? Not
mm,
every movie has same pace. Some movie
mm,
are like those Marvel kind of movie where like so
yeah,
like explosion all the
yeah,
time and stuff like that. Like a blue big laser like pointing at the sky, and then you have to go punch the guy that are at the base of the laser,
yeah,
right? That's your investigation. That's the level you have, right? But some movies are like, I don't know, like Casablanca, right? or or like what's the Orson Welles one, very famous one, Citizen Kane, right?
Citizen Kane, yeah,
Yeah, and they're different genres, stuff like that, and
mm,
you have to be able, like, it's good to be able to go from one to the other, especially if you're doing a long running campaign. Like changing the pace is going to keep your campaign fresh as well, and controlling the pressure, the time pressure that you put on your
mm,
player is an important skill as a GM.
mhm,
Something that you can develop, like know when to put the pressure,
mm,
when to light a fire under your player,
yeah,
and know when to let them breathe a bit, right?
mm.
Let them think.
Yeah, because like sometimes it would be interesting if the player starts to pick out a book, and then somebody in the library walks up, and like flashes a knife and is getting ready to stab them, and they don't even get to read something. But that in and of itself is information that it's like, uh-oh, you're getting too close to figuring out who this guy is. So that's information that you're on the right track. Maybe
Hmm.
you end up subduing this guy, you find something on this person, you find more out about him. Or maybe it's the inverse, right? And it's a very subtle change, but just instead of before they read the book, after they get the information from the book, then that guy shows up. So it can be, you can change the pacing a lot by just this little, touch there.
And it's also about like gauging how engaged your player are and how into the investigation they are. Like because if they are like into like looking for clues and they seem to they're still active, they're still in character, they're talking to each other in character, they're trying to figure out a plan, they're trying to figure out the next step, and they're still engaged, the dialogue is still going. Let them go with that, right? Let them figure it out. Don't go and do the mask off moment and all of a sudden the bad guy reveal itself, like, oh, you look for 3 clues and all of a sudden, haha, it was me all along, and you and then it resolves to a fight, because now you just like rob the players from the satisfaction of figuring it out themselves using their brain, right? And or from the role play and stuff like that. You just like give them a silver platter, and now we're just gonna resolve this mystery to combat again, right? Just like not everything has to be solved with combat, especially if you're not in D&D.
Yeah. And, maybe once the guy figures out that the party is on his tail, he's left town. They've, maybe he has no real reason to stick around. It might be that, they figure out all the clues. They figured out who it is, and they go ask around, and it's like, oh, that guy, he just, he headed out, and 3 days ago to, God knows where. And it's like, God damn it. Well, now they thought the investigation was done, but now they got to go track the guy down, and it leads to sort of another type of investigation, finding out wherever this guy went.
And what other good practice would be to run this investigation type scenario?
That's a good practices.
When the character are on the right or wrong track, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think having just in general, when things start to speed up, it's generally because whoever it is or whatever it is aware that the party is getting close. Somebody's hot on their tail. Or things just go silent, the other way. The guy, you don't have any murders for a long string of time because the guy's, instead of murdering, he's out spending his time, covering up his evidence. And so it way slows down. So I think usually when the pace changes, that's a sign that they're getting closer to what's correct. And if things are just sort of happening as usual, and it's like, well, yep, another week passes, another guy drops dead. Another week passes, another store gets robbed. Another week passes, and you're no closer to figuring anything out. That's another sign. Without telling your players, you don't think that information's any value. It's just like, man, we're not getting closer to it, and that can be, that can be frustrating, especially to a good character when there's a toll in bodies.
Yeah. And what if a trail goes cold?
I think in general, you don't want a trail to go totally cold. You want something to be at the end there that at least, if they don't get any other information, it tells them for sure that one of their leads was not it. That wasn't the guy robbing, this noble. That wasn't.
Oftentimes that's how a trail actually go cold. No, you're following some leads, and then it leads to a dead end, and then you try to get back on your step, and it's like, well, I don't know where to go next, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, though, once you figured out that guy definitely wasn't it, there are some things that you can rule out. Okay, well, what did he have? Why did we think it was this guy? All right, what are the other suspects? What do they have in common with this guy? Who did we rule out early on that maybe we shouldn't have ruled out given what we know now? Maybe there was a red herring earlier that just totally didn't matter. Maybe we found a left-handed rapier at the crime scene covered in blood. Maybe he planted that there as a total red herring. Maybe the guy was right-handed. Yeah, and that's also true. Maybe
Yeah,
it ends up being something where they just go, well, we can't, especially in a campaign, they've got multiple things going on. They just go, well, we
yeah.
can't spend all day just sitting here thinking. I guess we didn't solve it today. And then,
That's what I'm about to say. Like sometimes,
yeah,
like maybe the trails go cold. Maybe like the mysterious occurrence kind of died down a bit. Maybe it's gonna
yeah,
pick up later on. But letting the player kind of say like, well, you know what, we're gonna put that on the back
mm,
burner because we don't know where to go. But what I wanted to go with that is
mm,
like, don't necessarily like spoon feed.
yes, yeah,
And oh, just hear this free clue. Oh, the trail got
mhm,
cold. You don't know. All of a sudden, there's this one thing, obvious thing that is like dropping from the sky for you,
yeah,
right? Because that then the conclusion is going to be unsatisfying.
mhm,
I
yeah,
guess for me would be actually as a player,
yeah,
right? If the trail goes cold, just make sure you have other things going around. Or
yes,
if you
yeah,
want, if the player are just stumped and then all of a sudden like there's nothing much going on because they don't have any more idea and stuff like that, now is the time to bring an emergency,
mm,
but that's going to lead them to something else. It's going to keep them
mm,
busy with something else, right? Like
yeah,
occupy them with something that is not related to that case. And then at some
and
point, maybe the case is going to pop up again and say, oh, what? Fuck.
mm.
Like by accident, like, well, but this guy, like,
And
know this?
you could even tie them into each other. Maybe the thing that
Yeah,
shows
that's
up
what I'm saying.
away, is maybe it turns out it's their employer. An employer gives them a job somewhere on the other side of town explicitly so that they're not at the scene of the next murder or robbing or whatever, and
Yeah,
then they're like eventually maybe they start to put together, man, it's weird that these things always happen the same day we go get a job at the other side of town to, or something like that.
yeah,
They start putting things together. So yeah, it needs to be organic, right?
yeah. And you can have like those story that kind of like embrace, like
Mm,
one, like, you're gonna work a little bit on this one, then oh, we did what we could here. So we're gonna do some other adventure, some other like other cases that are smaller and stuff like that, and then at some point we're gonna go back to that, right? Something else happened, it,
mhm,
it pop up again, right?
yeah,
That can be interesting in a campaign, right? Just like you have
mhm,
like this overarching plot that you're working toward, but you
mhm.
have to work towards slowly, and you have like
Yeah,
other
maybe
things that are.
one of the
Mhm.
things I think is cool to do is you find out that this guy that got murdered, it was from like it was, you bring this up to the government, and you know I don't do this super often because that's like a struggle for GMs. It's a thing that you like. You don't want to do it all the time, otherwise your players are just knowing what you're going to do. But
Yeah,
something that I've done in the past that I should probably do again sometime, which is I like when the murders lead to more political conflict, which is to say
yeah,
that, like, you find out the guy murdered where it's like, oh, this is an expat. And it's like, oh, the guy that got murdered was a spy. And, you bring it up to the government and, the local police, they bring it up to higher ups. And then all of a sudden, men in black suits carry the body off and they're like, never speak of this event again. And it's like,
yeah.
something that's very under wraps. And then that
Or
leads
no,
to yet
all of
another
a sudden,
investigation. Yeah.
there's people that don't want to investigate you to investigate that
Yeah.
case anymore, and then
Yeah.
now you have to figure out like why all of a
Yeah.
sudden it
Mhm.
became like a,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Mm,
can be one thing as well.
mm.
What about the red herring?
Oh, red herrings. Yeah. Red herrings. I feel like in literature and in other pre-written media, we have, the red herring as like it's kind of a hallmark of investigations where it's like, well, you've got to have some red herrings, otherwise, it's like, I would say don't have them at all, but be very thoughtful of your placement of the red herrings. A red herring should lead you down another path. It should lead you to another suspect that isn't actually the person, or the thing that are bad red herrings are ones that last 5-10 minutes of, oh, you've over described the painting on the wall, so I'm going to go to the painting, I'm going to move behind it, see if there's a safe behind the painting, I'm going to take the painting out of the frame and see if there's something written on the inside, and you just keep going, no, there's nothing behind it, no, there's nothing on the inside of the paint, so scraping off the paint to see if there's something below the paint, and it just goes deeper and deeper, and they're going on to nothing.
Yeah.
The red herring should lead them somewhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We should branch out to something else at least.
Mm-hmm.
That remind me, like, you're talking about the red herring. It remind me of the when Agatha Christie was writing those novels, right? And she was like very popular, like crime novelist.
Yeah.
But there were some other like crime novelists that were very upset at her because they say like she's a terrible crime novelist because she lied to the reader, because she like, you say like the fun of a crime novel is that you should be able to read the novel and figure out who done it before the end, like before the actual, like before the protagonist of the book does, right? But you can do that. You cannot do that with a Agatha Christie book because the narrator lies to you, right? They tell you like, oh, no, the gardener wasn't there, but then oh no, he was there. It was like, and then, well, you gave me like false information, like, so that I cannot guess, right? So yeah, I'm surprised by the ending because I was working with false.
In that example, I would say it needs to be very clear in your session 0 or your social contract how you're using your language. Lots of GMs will throw out it looks like, it appears to be, it might be, it's kinda, and what they mean is it is. That is 100% how it is.
They're just filler word.
Yeah, it's a filler word in that case. What I would rather have is that the GM says it may be an unreliable narration. If I use words like it is, I'm just
that's something I want to talk about. Unreliable narration, right? Like that's something we see in books and people talk about it in role playing game. But the thing is, like in role playing game, you don't have unreliable narration. If the GM describes something, the thing is as the GM describes it, right? Might not say everything because maybe something has been left uncovered, but what he says is it's 10. What you can have is unreliable NPC, but the NPC are not the narration, they're character, and character can lie, but the GM shouldn't lie.
I would say also the character's senses can be unreliable, right? If you fail a perception check, I may not necessarily tell you that you failed it, right? Especially if it's something like a hidden check, I'll tell you exactly what your character sees.
Yeah.
They may just not see what's going on, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What the GM described is the GM doesn't have to say all that it is, but what he say is. Right?
Yes.
I think
that's what that's why I would like things like if you be aware of your usage of things like it appears, it's like and so because that might be informing your players that that's an unreliable bit of narration. It might be informing them that, and you can use different words to do this. Like there's a figure, but it's foggy. It's difficult to make out exactly, if that's a dude, if that's a woman, if, things like that. Be clear when you're being unreliable, because if it's just totally random as to when you're unreliable, then you'll lead to that same thing of the players, unturning every single stone, trying to find the correct thing just to get the exact detail they're looking for.
Yeah, that's also an exercise you can do as a GM to some skill to develop, like the way to first to get rid of those like filler word, which is not easy to do because like they are used to give you like an extra little fraction of a second to think, right?
Yeah.
But also develop the language that you don't have to say like thing like, oh, it seems to be wet. You can say like, well, it's there's condensation on it, or there's you can like describe in other way, like it seems to be made in metal, it's glistening, like it's it's glistening in the sun, right? Just like you give clue that from the sense, because like is it wet? Well, you kind of need to touch it to know, right? If you didn't touch the thing, you don't know. So you would be then say it seems to be wet. Well, touch it, it's wet, right? Just like, but you could find like developing those other mostly visual cue, because that's the first thing that gets to us. Usually, it's the sight, right?
Yeah.
It's the we're very visual creature.
Yeah.
So developing this visual language to describe
Mm.
things that would be confirmed by other senses,
Yeah.
especially like by the touch and stuff like that. I guess
Mm.
it'd be hard to visually describe how something sound, but sound also get us pretty fast, so we can describe sound.
Yeah. Yeah, things like instead of like it appears to be covered in blood, you
Yeah,
could just say it's covered in blood, or you could say
yeah,
it's dyed a brownish red. It's like,
yeah.
okay, well, is it dyed a brownish red because it's brownish red, or is it? There's a bit of unreliable narration, which can be further explained by the other senses. It's got a strong iron smell to it.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's splotchy. It's not even. It doesn't look like it was done intentionally. Um, you know, and that could give
Yeah,
that you have like a piece of cloth, a piece of clothing that's almost looks like it's totally dyed this color. Then it gives you like, oh, wow, that's a lot of blood that somebody's lost. Maybe you haven't found the body yet. Maybe you found a blood trail and you're looking for the body. That creates tension now because you're looking for like, okay, whatever did this is like totally exsanguinated this body. That's are we looking for a vampire? Are we looking for something with like that's going to inflict like huge wounds? And that can go back to the sort of horror thing where it sets up, because you haven't over described, you haven't explicitly said what it is or isn't. Now it's left to the players' minds to kind of figure out what's caused that to happen.
yeah. But that's also a good exercise to have, like describing those, like, how do you describe blood without seeing blood, right? And without
Yeah.
saying it seems to be blood. Like those are like language thing that is good to think about outside the game. When you say like do less prep, you can replace
Yeah.
your prep by that. Just
Yeah.
develop like
Yeah.
develop like lexicon. Like,
Yeah. And
oh,
I
it's
think,
covered in a dark red viscous liquid.
yeah. And I think
Real.
that's
Is it
part of
blood?
why
Oh,
people
taste
want
it.
to prep. They have that box text and stuff that you
Yeah,
just read aloud, wrote to the players, and it's always really clear whenever someone's reading box text because it doesn't sound like any of the other stuff they're narrating.
yeah.
And it's like,
I
well,
hate box text.
yeah, try to make your speech, and this is in general, not just for investigations, but because investigations, it is important to describe the surroundings more so maybe than anything else. Make it, if you do like a particular passage of box text, try to make your general narration sound like that box text. So ideally, your players don't know what's box text and what isn't if you're using box text. I don't like it either, but
And
find out.
one thing that
Yeah, yeah.
one thing that bothers me, and I'm gonna say it now, it's
Mm,
more or less in the topic who are now, but we're
mm,
talking about box text and
mm,
senses and stuff like that.
mm.
That's an advice that's often told to the people, like, oh, you describe the thing in more than one sense, just not visually. Like, try to touch like
Oh,
three
more
of
than
the
one.
five senses and stuff
Mm.
like that, and say like, well, it depends. Like,
Yeah,
first you want to keep your description short.
yeah,
I think that's important. People like the box text often like way too long and way too detailed and,
yeah.
and way too like flourishy language, right?
Mm,
Which it's annoying. But also like, did the character interact with the world? Did the character like, you know, are you gonna describe touch if the character didn't see it's touching the thing, right? How are you gonna
mm,
describe, just like
yeah,
description should be short, and there should be you can give like a general visual impression, and then if they look at something in specific, then you can
mm,
give more detail on that thing. But you have to wait for the character to interact with the world, sometimes to specify the description, right?
mm.
Like, you're not going to describe how something tastes until the character tasted it,
Yeah.
right? Just
How did I figure that out, man? Uh,
yeah,
uh, yeah, like I agree in general with the idea of use more than just the sense of perception, because that can get kind of samey, and then you can end up with. I think it's really interesting, but I think it's a challenge for a lot of GMs. If you have a character that's blind, how are you giving
yeah,
information to that character, right? Or a
yeah.
character that's deaf or what have you? You have to think about the different senses in a different way.
I think
And
like
just
the big three are like a sight, sound and smell,
Hmm. Yeah.
because those are the things that reach
Yeah.
us, like
Yeah.
they come to us,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
But
And yeah, and like I said, it could be very impactful to just have uh, a just have one of those. Just have a very simple sentence.
mhm.
Uh, a while ago, my players knew they were tracking down a vampire, and all I needed to do is say, they're rounding the corner. There's a chained up door on a shed, and all I had to do is say the scent of iron hangs heavy in the air. Just one sentence, and immediately everyone's going like, "Oh man, what are we gonna find in that shed?" Like, it's gross. I don't want to go in there. And half of them are worried like, what if the vampire's still in there? It's like it's that thick. This guy's been recently killed, and it's just one sentence. Led to like probably 5 minutes of inter-party banter as they're like, no, you break that thing open, you get in there first. Yeah.
And that's interesting too, because it's something that you can get before opening the door, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like a like sound and smell can go
Mm-hmm.
through some wall, right?
Yeah.
Some So that's also something that to for foreshadow, I guess, in
Mm-hmm.
almost in a sense, right?
Yeah. And likewise,
Uh,
it gives a sense of recency. If they
yeah,
smell the blood, then it must have been pretty
yeah.
recent, because it's not
So
dried
something
out or anything.
it's also something you can have in the dark. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess those are
Yep.
interesting as well.
Yep. And likewise, if instead you smelled like rotting, you smelled, sulfur or something like that, it would tell you, oh, it's probably been a while.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that was a bit of a tangent on using the senses. I think it's related, but a bit of a
Yeah.
tangent still.
Yeah.
The other thing I
Yeah.
want to say is about the investigation. It's not just about stuff. It's not about like looking at clue in a
Mm-hmm.
room and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Investigation role playing game should be a lot about social interaction,
Yeah.
talking to NPC,
Mm-hmm.
talking to witness, talking to suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's it's a big part. The social interaction is a big part. You don't want to make it like those adventure game, like I said, like you just use rope on
Yeah.
shovel, it does nothing. Use rope on doorknob, it does nothing. Use, it does something, click, right? People like
Mm,
run their fucking investigation game like that, right?
mm.
No, you look at stuff, yes, and you let the player like contribution, the player idea stand if they're good and if they fit with the world, right? And then you fucking talk to people. That's what people do. That's what, like,
Yeah.
look at those police show, right? Police
Yeah.
procedural show.
Mm.
They go talk to people, and that's what make it
It's
interesting.
yeah, and it's like the first thing they'll have one guy, if something's happened and they're still not sure what's happened, they'll even to today, even if you're not running an old timey, 1920s, investigation like in Call of Cthulhu, if you're running something modern, they'll still have cops in an area
Yeah,
walk door to door, knock on people's doors, and go, "Hey, do you know anything about this hit and run? Do you know anything about the shooting?"
yeah, yeah. And then you have like people like like you interact with people. They get
Mhm.
nervous. Maybe
Yeah.
they lie. Maybe they say like that.
Yeah.
That can be interesting to role play as well.
And that's a good point to not have the single roll decide something. Like say
Yeah,
you have something like a sense motive or um, some sort of like ability to tell if someone's lying to you roll. Not having the thing just entirely determined by, oh, you can tell that the suspect is lying, that's the guy, boom, investigation wrapped up with a single roll. No, because people lie even if they're not the suspect for this crime. Maybe this dude committed a totally unrelated crime, and you got to check his license plate or whatever. If you are playing like a police officer, you check their plate, and it's like, oh, this guy was he robbed a grocery store a few years ago. Maybe that's you get hyper fixated on the small amount of details you do have, and great, you've arrested a criminal, but not the criminal you were looking for.
yeah, and it's also like with if you do like those sense motive role and stuff like that, it's not about like, oh, he lied, he's
Mm.
lying.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't be so obvious, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
he's nervous.
Yeah.
Or like when you talk about that, he seemed
Yeah.
like when you touch a specific topic, you
Yeah.
try to be a little more like a little more coy about it. You want to
Mm.
let the player like think about it. Just like he seemed to be. They're not telling you everything you can. Like
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
go. Don't go all the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe,
he's lying.
he doesn't seem to be lying. It seems like he's not telling you everything though.
Yeah.
And um
Yeah. Or he's
maybe
just
you know,
uncomfortable. Or he's
maybe
just
this
like
guy that's pissed and he just slams the door in your face. Maybe he's got nothing to hide. He just doesn't want to talk to you. You
yeah.
um, things like that. And then, um, other than just talking to witnesses, it can also be talking to, in the event that you're not playing a cop, or nobody none of your players are playing a cop. It can be talking to the cops. It can be the other end of the thing. Hey, there's if there is any, maybe you're playing in some sort of tyrannical, like cyberpunk, dystopia, and maybe the players don't want to report it to corpsec or the police or whatever, because they're just going to write up a quick thing and be like, yep, we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing sort of thing.
Yep.
So maybe it becomes like, all right, who are we going to take this to, right? And they have to start thinking about their contacts. Maybe they have to hide a body, because they're trying to figure out who actually did it.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. It's trying to or more questioning, or they're gonna look into that guy more like on the side. Maybe they're just gonna leave, say, "Oh, thank you for your time, thank you,"
have
and
a
then
nice day.
they're gonna look at the background check, or keep an eye on that guy, do some surveillance like that. It lead to more action than just like it lead to more than just a conclusion. It's not a dead end, right? It's not like oh, there you go. No, there's something. It's a seed for more. And the other thing I wanted to say about social interaction, when the character are doing investigation, like in Call of Duty and stuff like that, they want to go to the library and stuff like that. Maybe they find a book about something, right? Having them read a book, that's not engaging gameplay.
Yeah.
Well, you read the book and you figure that out from the book. Maybe they're gonna get some information from the book, but why not put them in contact with the author, right?
That's exactly what I was about to say. Yes, I was. I love putting like just the subject of the book, what the book is generally about, and then who the author is, and going, maybe you don't get much more information about this, but it's on the right, it's on the right path of things. Well, you can go contact the author.
Maybe it's an old book, right?
Yeah.
And the author would be long dead. But then they go look for it, and then the page has been painted black.
Yeah.
For the information you're looking for. Now, are you gonna go try to look at the previous people that rented the book from the library? Or like have them in contact with people that would know. It's gonna be much more interesting than having them read to a website or read to a book, right? It's gonna be much more like engaging for the roleplay session. The book and stuff like that can give you like partial information. So it doesn't feel like, well, that was a waste of time, since that's fine. And it also lead to, well, oh, this other guy got access to the book before, or this guy wrote, like, page torn down, stuff like that. That's a much, in my opinion, it's much more interesting, and lead to it feeds the mystery as well.
I had a great time playing a city guard in one of the games I play in, and we found a guy murdered, and we were talking to some of the suspects in the cells, and one guy just wasn't talking at all. He was wasn't getting any information about him out of him, but I could tell he for sure knew something. And instead of just sitting there and like, you can end up in these dumb situations where if your game doesn't have a you can only roll this skill once per. You can go, oh, I roll sense motive
Yeah.
again. I ask another question. I
Well,
roll
that's
sense motive again. I ask another, and it just gets ridiculous. I just go,
yeah.
oh well, maybe I go to the next cell over and go, hey, who is this guy? I find out some more information about him from one of the guys in the gang that he knew. And then
Yeah.
he goes, oh, he's got a wife and kids. And it's like, now I go back over and I go, hey, you don't want to talk to us? That's fine. Maybe I go give your wife a visit tonight. Now, all of a sudden, this guy's way more willing to talk, or even if he isn't, we do go to his wife, find out what his
Yeah.
wife knows about things,
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember as well. Like when you interact with people, and it's important like in role playing in general, but it's especially important when the character are
Mm-hmm.
into an investigation. Remember that the people you talk to are people. They have
Mm-hmm.
life,
Yeah.
they have goal,
Yeah.
they have interest, they have fear.
Mm-hmm.
They are complex people, and those goal, fear, interest, life can get in the way of
Mm-hmm.
your investigation in a thousand different way, and that
Mm-hmm.
makes it interesting. It makes the world feel much more
Yeah.
living. It make it feel like more like a real place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in this case, that wife didn't know. It was a really awkward moment because we went in all macho, kicked the door down, and we're like gonna interrogate the wife, and the wife's like, the turns out the wife doesn't know her husband's a criminal, and we're like, oh, this is really awkward. We didn't want to break the news to you this way. Well, let's still see what kind of information we can get out of this, And it felt really bad. It was like a genuinely touching moment there, and it could have been totally spur of the moment. Could have been something totally made up on the spot, and it was still something that stuck with me. Months later, and yeah. So it doesn't. You need to remember that the random witness isn't just a clue to be checked off on a spreadsheet. It's they and if that wife did know, maybe she wants to protect her husband, not because she's in on the scheme or something, but just because that's what she wants to do, and you can end up with it's very messy. I think it should be way more messy than it actually is. That's another thing that in avoiding the Scooby-Doo trope, right? The Scooby-Doo at the end, they pull off the mask, they find out, oh, it's that guy, and it's like, that's it, wrap it up, next episode. But it should be messy, right? You should go to your witnesses and find out, yeah, this guy did rob that store, but the guy who owns that store has maybe even committed worse crimes. Maybe it's maybe you end up finding out everything through the investigation and go, actually, we don't want to report that to the police because, yeah, this guy committed these crimes, but he's, it turns out this is a vigilante that we've, found out that's dishing out the justice in his own way or something like that.
And then you become accessories to crime.
Yeah, exactly. And it becomes a totally different thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there like a
Yeah.
anything else you wanted to add on the topic of, or should we try to wrap up? Is there something we think we missed? We didn't, or people in chat, if there's anything you want to
yeah.
talk about, like you have a few minutes before while we're wrapping up. Because I think we can also like try to summarize a bit what the conclusion that we drawn tonight, right? Yeah. For me, like the big thing I'd say, right? My big point when I talk to investigation is like an investigation can happen in any setting, in any game, right? And you have to let it happen when it happens. When the players want the character to investigate something, well, you're in an investigation scenario. Don't necessarily try to force an investigation on them. If you try to present this plot hook where like, oh, there's this mystery, and they don't buy it, well, they're not interested in that. So come up with something else, right? Change your idea for something that they're gonna buy. Leave them some rooms to the investigation. If they want to look for stuff, do the research and stuff like that. Don't keep lighting fire under their ass, right?
Yeah.
Give them time to talk to people and to go check places and stuff like that. And remember that it's not about like trying to guess what is in the GM mind for the player, and that it's remember like social.
Yeah.
The social aspect of investigation is it's where the juice is, right?
Yeah.
It's where the meat, like interacting with stuff, looking at place, looking at that's
Mm.
good and necessary, but talking to people and having them be people is gonna be what's gonna make your investigation feel much more interesting, much more
Yeah.
memorable, in my opinion.
Hmm. And
Anything else, Lila, you want to
likewise,
add?
yeah, don't over describe. Give very clear
Yeah.
descriptions, but don't, give multi-page long descriptions. Because either that's going to tell your players immediately, well, that's probably a clue, or that's a total red herring, and they're going to spend 30 minutes wasting time on it. Think about the way the magic or any fantastical elements work in your thing. That way you don't run into the issue of the divination wizard goes, I just used this piece of the victim's
Yeah.
hair and I figure out who did it.
Yeah, thinking about the magic, that's a big one.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
do like investigation, in fantasy setting,
Yeah.
think of what kind of magic they have access to.
Likewise, think about the authorities, think about the laws, think about
Yeah.
what sort of things are going to be happening. Think about the perpetrator, think about why they did it, how good are they at covering their evidence up, how frequently do they commit their crimes. You can have a calling card. That's a calling card might be tropey, but it's a trope because serial killers in real life do it. So I wouldn't say don't be too don't avoid tropes for the sake of avoiding tropes if they're things that actually happen, right? Yeah, I think that's the bulk of it. I think if you keep those like 10 or so things in mind, you should be pretty well equipped to make a pretty solid investigation. It might also, if you do really want to run an investigation, you could keep in mind if it is relevant to your system, to tell players to make certain characters or to make characters a certain type of way, right? If they tell your characters not to super pigeonhole themselves into making a super
Combat
dumb
monster.
walking brute that all he can do is fight because he's just gonna be sitting there doing nothing all the time. Or if they
that's
do
a big
make
part
that,
of the setting and the kind of like, but also I think as a GM also like, because like you say, if you want to make an investigation game, like I said, if you want to facilitate an investigation game, right? Because like I don't believe you should be making an investigation game like investigation happen because you create mystery, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the thing. We create problem in the world, and it's the problem it's on the characters to solve those problems, right? We don't come up with the solution as the GM. You say like, well, this thing happened there. Maybe you do know what is the cause. Maybe you don't. You can figure it out as the player, as the character figure it out, right? As the player figure it out. That's always my big advice is like let your player lead and let your players be co-creator of the scenario, of the story, of the world, and stuff like that. Don't put them on the railroad. Even if you give them like, oh no, you can go to the path A or the path B, there's branching path. Maybe there's even a path C. Well, still you're still on the railroad, right? You're on the railroad with a few like lane change, but then at the end you're gonna end up at the same goal, like or maybe you're not gonna reach it, right? You know what I mean? Like
just lay out a few facts, right? Like I said earlier, this is the perpetrator, this is what they've done, this is how long until they do it again, barring
you
other
might not even know who the perpetrator is. You might even not know when, like,
maybe
you just say like this thing happened. Maybe sometimes you don't even know that there's a mystery. Like that's something that happened. Like, oh, like there's a bunch of monsters that keep showing up. Like and then one player say like, who the fuck is sending those guys out? Like, oh, how come the orcs like who the fuck is giving those weapons to the orcs? The orcs always they have like those nice weapons. Who the fuck gave you like those weapons to the orc?
And if you're
you didn't think about it as a GM, but now it's a mystery. It's a mystery in the world, and the character wants to solve it. There you go.
If your players are thinking like this can actually be a great thing to do with random encounters. Random encounters can, if you roll them in a certain way, they can feel totally random and weird. And if you have good, what I would call good players that are thinking about it, they're going to go, why the hell do we keep finding orcs in the sewers? What's one? Why are we in the sewers? But maybe they're in the sewers for some reason, and they're like, why do we keep this? Is weird. What's going on here?
But that's also like almost a thing you say, like you mentioned random encounter, and if you say like roll random encounter, that's almost like a reason why I don't like rolling a random encounter, because if the players know that you're rolling random encounter, they disengage. They just say like, oh, just like random encounter. Maybe you want to roll them, but do it in a way that the player don't know that you're rolling. You're just something that happened in the world. Because the player know you're rolling, then there's not going to be this question like, how the fuck we keep encountering? Oh, you just roll orc on the table. There's the mystery is solved. You rolled orc on the table, right? So that's another thing, like another point against those encounter random table. If you want to use them, do it discreetly, or like do it in secret or whatever, right? So the world feel more organic, right? And now like you saw arc on the sewer,
and
I
think
there. I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah, on this note, I think something you also don't want to do. You definitely want to avoid. You want to avoid this in general, in my opinion, but more than ever, you want to avoid the quantum ogre with the investigations. If you've got clues that are moving all over the place, oh, well, this dead body was supposed to appear over here, but the players are over here. So the dead body's actually appeared over here. And that can get just ridiculous, and if you want the murder to happen close to the players, have that be a thing. Maybe this, murderer is, or whatever it is. I keep going back to murder because it's the common one, but maybe have it that the killer is following the players, and they get off. Maybe they get off on that thrill of making a kill happen in plain sight, and maybe that's the thing. But don't have it be at a fixed location and then go, well, they didn't go there. Okay, it happens over here instead. It's just you'll create problems for yourself down the line where they go, wait, wasn't that supposed to?
Yeah, and don't turn your role playing session into a clue session. If you want to play clue, you can play clue. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's a fine game. Yeah,
but it's okay.
It's a totally playable game. No, there's a.
So I hope this is going to be helpful for some people out there. A bit of a slower night tonight. What do you want to talk about next week, Tyler? Next week's probably is going to be like the 21. It's probably going to be the last episode of the year. Yeah, because we're probably gonna. I assume we're not gonna do one between like Christmas and New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I will be. Yeah, I will be quite busy.
Yeah, I was thinking since it's the last episode of the year, maybe we can talk about wrapping up campaign, wrapping up campaign and retiring character, or like wrapping up character arc. Yeah. Kind of do like this, putting a hand on thing, kind of like
that'd be cool, because I'm currently wrapping up a campaign right now. I'm wrapping up two campaigns actually, so one I play in and one I run. So I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. All right, then that's gonna be the topic for next week.
That should be it. So it will be. All right. Yes, I'm going to do the close. I did the opening. Thanks to everybody who is watching live. Thank you everybody who watches the replay. And thank you all for commenting during the live stream. Please comment if you have anything else to say. Really appreciate it. I know I read the comments. I'm sure Max does as well. It's really appreciated. We're going to be here again, same time, same place next week on Thursday, 7 p.m. Central. Fix it to your other time zones that don't matter.
Anything else coming up on your channel, Tyler?
Since my HEMA club isn't meeting anymore since for the rest of the year, since the school's shut down, I think I'm going to make some more sword stuff. People ask me, tons of people have the issue of they don't have any schools near them or anybody that does the stuff. So thinking about like some solo drills you can do whenever your club can't meet, or if your club just can't meet, period. With that, a video on, kind of why stances in games are dumb, because, that's the too long didn't watch that is you don't stay in a stance. So, they're kind of silly in games. Yeah. So yeah, more variety content hopefully coming. It's the holiday season, so I'm super busy. So now I try to stream and make videos when I can, but you're getting a grab bag if you come to
Yeah.
my channel. So
That's all right.
yeah,
And I'm gonna stream again on Sunday for my
nice.
everybody stream on Sunday. I don't know which. Maybe we're gonna do like the what is a role playing game kind of
Mm.
topic because we had a bit of a
Mm.
discussion last
Mm.
week on the stream. You should join sometime, Tyler, if you're free on Sunday.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
I'm thinking about also doing a Christmas stream. If people are interested, for like because I have nothing ongoing at Christmas,
Hmm.
so I think maybe I'm gonna set up a stream where we can like drink and sing Christmas carols and stuff like that. I'll see what other people do. So we don't have like if we do those stream because we're for people that are alone on Christmas, but we all do our stream on our end. Kind of defeat the purpose. The goal is
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
can get together. Like, so I'll see what other people do. But
yeah,
I'm sure if I cannot find a stream I want to be on, I'm gonna make my own. So keep an eye for that. I'll keep you informed. There's still 2 weeks to go.
yeah.
10 days to go. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Jeez,
and if
yeah,
I don't see you by then, Merry Christmas to all.
yes. Likewise.
But hopefully I'll see you by then.
Mm.
All right. Take care, Tyler.
Yeah. See you, Max.
And
See you, chat.
now we can all go watch Black Lodge game. Their stream's about to start now.
Oh,
And
sweet.
don't miss out. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah.
They didn't go as long as they normally do, I don't think.